Today's episode is brought to you by Space Cowgirl Marketing and Media, a one-stop space station for all of your solopreneur needs. Whether you have a complete functioning business and want to consult on how to level up, or you have nothing but an idea sparked from that random drive home last week, Space Cowgirl has the knowledge and services to help you conquer even the most far-off realities. My friend Lauren of Space Cowgirl Marketing and Media has been instrumental in helping me launch my dreams that were sitting on Someday Island into actual reality. I encourage you, friend, to visit spacecowgirl.com to take your ideas to the next level. Hey y'all, and welcome. You're listening to the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm your host, Dakota Dawn Johnson, small-town cowgirl with southern roots, blazing a trail as a Midwest ranch wife, mama, and businesswoman. The mission of Cowgirl Confessions is to share the wonderfully wild and western life stories of cowgirls from all walks of life. We'll talk about the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle. Legendary cowgirl Dale Evans said it best. Cowgirl is a pioneer spirit, a special brand of American courage. The cowgirl faces life head-on, lives by her own lights, and makes no excuses. Cowgirls take stands. They speak up. They defend the things they hold dear. A cowgirl might be a rancher, a barrel racer, a bull rider, or an actress. But she's just as likely to be a checker at the local Winn-Dixie, a full-time mother, a banker, an attorney, or an astronaut. If you're into wet saddle blankets, talks with God, buckets full of laughter, and the life lessons learned in the process, kick off your boots and settle in. I pray these stories encourage, empower, and give you just the leg up you need. Here's to embracing the cowgirl state of mind, no matter how wild and western life may get along the way. Hi, friend. Welcome to Season 4 of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. We are going to kick it off today with a brand new episode. And on this episode, I'm going to be sharing the 6 life skills that the International Professional Rodeo Association equipped me with that make a winning combination both in and out of the arena. And in the process, we're going to take a little stroll down memory lane to get there. So here we go. As a little girl, to feed my imagination and thirst for knowledge, my mama began reading old rodeo news magazines to me as bedtime stories. My favorite stories were about Miss Rodeo USA. I first fell in love with her lifestyle, her travels, and what Miss Rodeo USA did for the sport of rodeo. Once I saw a rodeo queen in person, the black and white rodeo news stories came to life. And upon meeting a rodeo queen, I realized my dream could become a reality. I held on to that dream for many years while preparing for the opportunity to compete for Miss Rodeo USA. In January 2010, as I stood on the dirt floor of the Jim Norick Arena in Oklahoma City during IFR 40's matinee performance, that dream put on my heart as a little girl finally came to fruition. You see, I've always viewed the role of a rodeo queen as being a job, and I take it seriously. Not in a hoity-toity, I'm the queen, take me serious kind of way, but in more of a servant heart position, if you will, like there's work to be done. How can I help? Okay, let's roll our sleeves up and go to work. While my role included me being a liaison for newcomers interested in learning more about the sport of rodeo, as well as promoting sponsors, I understood firsthand as a contestant myself how important it was for me as Miss Rodeo USA to be a good listener, as well as a voice to the public for the cowboys and cowgirls competing. Before I go any further, I want to share a quick bit of history with you about the IPRA. From big cities to small towns, from major league stadiums to portable arenas, the IPRA has become the sport's second largest professional rodeo association, sanctioning nearly 300 rodeos. The IPRA has a membership base of over 2,400 members and currently sanctions rodeos across the United States and Canada. Now, while the International Professional Rodeo Association was first founded in 1957 by 2 rodeo promoters and named the Interstate Rodeo Association, which many people refer to as the IRA for many years. It wasn't actually until 1964 that the IPRA revolutionized the sport of rodeo by creating a board of governors, including representatives from each segment of rodeo. So that means stock contractors, contestants, fans, producers, and contract performers became this body for the association's rule and policy making procedures. Now, listen up and be sure you hear what I'm about to say, as this is an important piece of the rest of the story. Revolutionary actions are not foreign to the IPRA. In 1961, the IPRA became the first rodeo association to recognize cowgirls barrel racing as a world championship event, nearly a decade before the women's liberation movement became widespread across the country. Can we just pause for a moment here to appreciate the innovative mindsets that have clearly been part of the IPRA since the early days? It's just incredible. Okay, so as Miss Rodeo USA, I was aware of this really cool, interesting fact about the Cowgirls barrel racing. However, I hadn't given it much additional thought until the spring of 2010, while I was chasing white lines, headed to my next event, and basically giving myself a pep talk before I called the general manager of the IPRA, Dale Urigan. I remember the moment so vividly, even though it was over 10 years ago. I was standing next to the arena at an IPRA rodeo in Georgia during that lull between the perf ending and the slack starting. By this point in the evening, thanks to the humidity and April rain shower, the short but the soaking kind of rain, plus the kids' boot scramble, I was looking like a real hot mess. And the only dry and clean thing on me still was my Miss Rodeo USA crown. A rodeo wife and friend of mine that I knew, from entering the breakaway roping at rodeos in the Southeast, she walked up beside me to video her husband in the slack. So we start chatting about, where they're entered next. And she asked me if I'd been getting to rope, any lately. And I told her not much, that as hard as it was to put my love for breakaway roping on the back burner for a year, I really had a desire to be all in my role as Miss Rodeo USA and be a voice for the contestants. Well, I had barely gotten that last sentence out of my mouth when she asked, well, what's it going to take to get the IPRA to add breakaway roping as an official event? I'd sure like to have a shot at some money too when my husband enters at an IPRA. And I just simply replied, well, I don't know, but I'll ask. So on my drive back to Oklahoma a few days later, I did just that. I called the general manager of the IPRA, Dale Urigan, and I asked. Of course, I had some really compelling reasons why I thought adding the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping was a great idea. One being that the IPRA was no stranger to being innovative. As I mentioned before, they made history with the Cowgirls barrel racing and starting a board of directors. But at that point, I didn't have any numbers to show how it could benefit the association. And even so, Dale listened. He heard me, and he even offered to add me to the agenda at the next IPRA board meeting to present the idea, which that in itself was just a moment for me where I was witnessing somebody show up and lean into their leadership role, and being willing to actively listen to someone else, because Dale didn't have to do that. He really didn't have to give me the time of day. I wasn't going to have a vote on that board meeting, but nonetheless, he said yes, he would put me on the agenda for the next IPRA board meeting to present the idea. And he just really encouraged me through all of that by being a great listener. His willingness also encouraged an entire board of directors to do the same and be willing to listen. So what began as a simple response of, I don't know, but I'll ask, became a question. Hey, Dale, what's it going to take, to get the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping? as an official event. And that turned into a much bigger conversation that eventually led to the IPRA making an innovative move once again. That's the short version of the story. There was so much that went on behind the scenes, so many people taking part in making that decision happen. And, it was just incredible when the board of directors approved the plan of adding the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping as an official IPRA event with the goal of having the top 15 women compete for a world title at IFR 42 that took place in January of 2012. And again, like I said, this was due to a lot of hard work, investment of time and money and resources, and convincing, selling this belief on many people's behalf that we're doing this behind the scenes. I learned a really valuable lesson through this part of the process, and it's simply this. If you don't ask the question, you will never know. Be brave enough to ask. You may not get the answer you want. Heck, you might not even get an answer at all. I mean, some people don't even return emails these days, much less phone calls. But as we all know, if we don't ask, then we are guaranteed to get nothing. So there's really nothing to lose by asking the question. All right, so diving back into the next part of the story, they've approved the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping. It's going to be an official event. So in 2011, I went to fire selling leather dresses and dyed-to-match boots and jeans to reinvest into my other passion, breakaway roping. Mind you, I had pretty much sold out of everything, sold my good horse, all the things. So I was restarting, like from the ground up to go after the opportunity to qualify for the IFR the following January. I was honored to serve as the IPRA's first Cowgirls Breakaway Roping director. But it's a job I'm not real sure anyone else wanted at the time. However, I was just too excited to notice. And like I said, I set my sights on the new goal, qualifying for my first IFR in January of 2012. The road to get there was a roller coaster ride, but in the end, I made it back to Oklahoma City to compete the following year, only this time without the big hair, a little less lipstick, and with a rope in my hand. I was still chock full of grit, determination, and appreciation of a dream realized. And sister, let me tell you, it was the best feeling backing in that box, getting to nod my head all 4 rounds and watch history be made alongside my peers. It's a feeling I will never forget. I placed 4th in the average that week, was named the IPRA Outstanding Spokeswoman of the Year, and that still just, it makes me smile till my face hurts, and it leaves me a little misty-eyed because I got to be part of something that was so much bigger than myself. And I share all of this to help serve as a reminder that, friend, you can have more than one dream. You do not have to fit a label that other folks want to put on you, like she's just this, or she's just that, or she's just a rodeo queen. She only breakaway ropes. You can be both. You can pursue multiple dreams and achieve them. The key is you have to decide how you want to go about it and get laser focused so you can invest your energy and time and resources into one thing at a time. Then on to the next one.
When it comes to navigating careers, cowboys, kids, and cattle, it can feel lonely sometimes, like you're down in the trenches trying to do all the things. But I want to share with you that it doesn't have to feel that way. I joined the Cowgirls Over Coffee membership in May of 2020, and y'all, it has been such a gift. It has allowed me to connect with women with that Western and rural background that simply get it. They understand what I'm working with. We get to share strategies, encouragement, and hold each other accountable as we're pursuing goals in all of these different areas of life. To learn more, visit cowgirlsovercoffee.com or check out episode 45 of the Cowgirl Confessions podcast that features the founder of Cowgirls Over Coffee, Thea Larson. I hope to see you there.
Thanks for taking that stroll down memory lane with me, but I'm going to rein it in now, do the best I can anyway. And while there have been so many lessons that I've learned over the years from the IPRA and just the rodeo community, the people in it, the experiences in general, I want to dive into the meat and potatoes of this episode and share with you the 6 life skills that the IPRA equipped me with that are a winning combination both in and out of the arena. So, those 6 life skills are number 1, how to travel efficiently and cost effectively. Number 2, time management. Number 3, the art of making everybody feel like a somebody. Number 4, this is a twofer, active listening and how that can help you work well with others. Number 5, problem solving. And last but not least, number 6, knowing when to lean into a challenge. So, taking it back to number 1, how to travel efficiently and cost effectively. So, it became really imperative throughout my time as Miss Rodeo USA and as a contestant is learning how to really stretch a dollar and figure out how to get from one place to the next as efficiently as possible to eliminate wear and tear on yourself, on your horses, and your vehicles and equipment. So learning, number 1, how to be comfortable and confident in traveling alone. I mean, I learned how to rent a car. I was able to learn how to travel, be it alone or with other people. And I feel like both are a unique skill set in themselves because there's, some people that just because they haven't had to travel alone, they're not comfortable doing that. And the only way you get comfortable with something is getting out of your comfort zone. And then likewise, I learned a lot over the years having different hauling partners. And sometimes they're hauling partners that like you just know the minute you get in the truck, you can feel the good aura. Everybody's on the same page. It's a win-win. And then there's other times that like you've jammed 6 of you in a truck to get to Canada and back, and you're doing it literally to split the cost. And they may not be your favorite people, but you just grin and bear it and get by. And so, I've been able to use just kind of that cowgirl state of mind throughout life. Sometimes you got to get in the car with other people. It makes sense. You can grin and bear it, get through it, but knowing how to travel efficiently, cost effectively, alone or with other people. Number 2, time management. So being able to like jam pack as much as I possibly could into that first year, that original, I say first year, my year as Miss Rodeo USA was really, really important to me. But there was also a lot of responsibility to do things outside of just going to rodeos. And so, a lot of times what that looked like is if I wanted to be able to go to a rodeo and then stop on the way and have dinner one night, a home cooked meal with some friends along the way, then that meant that I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a blog post. And then I got on the road at 6 so that, I wasn't falling behind on my responsibilities, but I figured out how to manage my time and get the job done. And then, really as a contestant, as things changed and, my life changed, it was figuring out like, how do I get 5 days worth of work done in 3.5 so that I can leave early to go to rodeos? And it's like, well, if I use 3.5, days worth of lunch breaks, that's 4 hours. If I use that to make sales calls instead of taking lunch and just grab some Cheez-Its and a Diet Coke, well, hey, that's managing my time in an efficient way that allows me to do things that I really love. So, number 3, the art of making everybody feel like a somebody. This is one that, truly like in my heart is probably my favorite skill that I learned that year. And I got a lot of practice at it because you're meeting so many people. And then these are people that it's not like just a one and done situation. You're needing to reconnect with some of these people that you may only get 5 minutes at a time with because they're going a different direction and things like that. But you still want to be impactful in that short amount of time that you get to meet them. So, I was able to watch other people, observe them, learn from them, and how they really thought about how did they manage to make me feel like I matter. When the chairman of the board manages to make me feel like what I have to say matters, and he's on the other end of the phone, 6 states away. How does he do that? What does he say? Like, what's the tone in his voice? Things like that. So, um, really, honing in on having good eye contact, being present in that moment, being a great listener, remembering somebody's name, and something about them. That always helped me kind of dial in on that art of making everybody feel like a somebody. And I mean, we all know there's going to be people involved with everything you do. It really doesn't matter what your job is or your responsibility. If you can figure out how to work with people, if you give them this respect, what I've experienced is they give you typically this, it's a mutual respect in return. And then that is so helpful. It's so helpful for both parties, regardless of, what you're doing going forward, just knowing that you're on the same team and working towards something together. So, number 4, active listening and how to work well with others. So, knowing how to understand another person's perspective is, invaluable, I would say. And really the idea of like making them feel heard. And so, one of the situations that I was able to be a part of in the past was like working at the International Finals Youth Rodeo as an official timer. And this experience truly like really brought to life for me how important it is to be actively listening and like really zoned in on working well with others. Because if you've never been to this event before, it happens every summer in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Contestants come from all across the nation to compete, and there's like 3 arenas that are they have contestants performing in them, events simultaneously. There are multiple judges, timers, announcers. There's just a lot going on. And so, in order to do your job as a timer, to be focused on the arena in front of you, the contestant in front of you, you have a timer that's also, helping you. And then you've got your secretary. Like, you've got to be able to actively listen and then work well with your counterparts in a really like high energy environment and pretty fast paced. So that taught me a lot. It's helped me in so many other areas of my life as far as just being able to zone in and get the job done in that moment. And then the other time I was able to utilize that life skill and put it to practice within the IPRA was at the end of 2019. I was actually asked to be a speaker at the IPRA Ladies Luncheon, and that takes place in conjunction with the IFR each year. And so this was the same time period, pre-COVID, when there was a really big change made within the IPRA. We moved from having the IFR in Oklahoma City. It had been held there for years, and it moved to its current home in Guthrie at the Lazy E. And so it was a change that I don't think, is very unexpected for most people. And there was really a lot of grumbling about it at first, I think, just because people, they weren't willing to embrace change. And so instead of just being like, oh, people are grumbling, it really, I leaned into that active listening. And from that, it helped me decide what I would speak about at that luncheon, because I had the opportunity to, share a thought, share a vision, try to inspire and motivate some people to have a different way of thinking. And, I spoke about change and how just the smallest mind shift. And if we would choose to embrace change instead of resisting it, how powerful that can be for not just individuals, but an organization as a whole, like the IPRA. So a lot of times if you're willing to actively listen, you can take that feedback and then you can turn it around and utilize it, to move the ball forward, if you will. So number 5, problem solving. Man, during my time as the event director for the breakaway roping is when I got a lot of experience in problem solving. And if you haven't listened to episode 46 here on the podcast, highly recommend going to listen to that. Cassie Vaughn, she's the current breakaway roping director, does a phenomenal job. She was a guest on that podcast, and we really dive into what that role looks like, just the type of problem solving you're dealing with and whatnot. So great listen if you haven't already checked that out. But during my time as a director, knowing the rules was my job, and knowing how to listen. That seems to be a common theme, doesn't it? Listening. Knowing how and where to seek wise counsel. I do not know everything. I'm never going to know everything, and I never want to be the smartest person in the room. But as an event director, it's so imperative that like the people that know more than you or know how to think about something a different way and help you find a solve when possible. Or they can be that one that says, I hear you. I hear the frustration. And sometimes it's just that. Sometimes people just need to be heard, and then you ask the question, so how could I best help you, or what do you think I should do in this situation that could be a solve? And I'll tell you, most people, they don't have a solve. They don't get to that point. They don't think about, well, this is how you solve it. They just bring you the problem. And so problem solving is a skill set that I feel like is really not talked about enough. And if you become a great problem solver, you can really make a big difference no matter what you're doing. It can really change things. And so I used to say, well, no news is typically good news. And then when you get the call, it was typically something because there was a problem. But that whole process really helped me know how to solve problems and solve problems with people that like you got to solve problems with them or help them feel heard, because you're going to continue to have to work with them. It's not like, oh, it's a problem and then you don't have to deal with this person if they don't like what you do. No, these are people that are consistently going to rodeos. They are your stock contractors. They are personnel. You got to find a common ground and know how to work through that. So last but not least, knowing when to lean into a challenge. And I have my own little checklist that I'll run through for how I know when to lean into a challenge. And really the pursuing, the idea of having the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping added as an official event. I mean, it was a challenge. It was really a step out there. I had a lot of people that they just didn't see the vision. They didn't share the vision, and they kind of thought I was crazy for even really having the gumption to ask to present it, much less to go and spend the time and do the research to present back. And at any point in this, I don't ever want that part to sound like I did this, I did that. I did do a lot of legwork, but there were so many more people like me helping me do that legwork. And so I just want to make sure and say that, there were one of the things that we did in preparation for saying, hey, this is why, this is financially what it could do for the association, was I was calling all of the amateur rodeo associations, anybody that I could find online, and saying, hey, how many cards do you sell every year? How many memberships? And out of that percentage, how many of those are breakaway ropers? And collecting data that way, because it wasn't something you could just Google. This was like true person to person interaction and sharing the idea with them, so that, hey, if you know anybody that could be helpful, has an idea of how we could present this, any more information, like, please give them my number. I'd love to talk to them. So it was a challenge leaning into that. And how I decided whether or not it was worth to lean into this challenge was really kind of asking myself these questions. Number one, does this benefit anyone besides me? And if so, who? Number two is there a greater good opportunity here? Like, could this change and make a difference in the lives of others and the way in which we currently do business? Number three, what is it about this idea that others aren't comfortable with? Look at this from all angles, because that can be really telling. And sometimes you might identify a reason that you're like, you know what, maybe it's not worth leaning into this challenge. And then the final one is, how much time and energy am I willing to dedicate to this challenge? That is a key piece right there, my friend, because you can have something that you're like, yes, I'm passionate about this. I think it needs to change. All the things, have all the feelings. But if you can't clearly define, do you have the time, the energy, like to dedicate yourself to see this through, then you may not be the best fit for the person that needs to lean into that challenge. And maybe that needs to be somebody else's job to lean into it, to kind of push it forward, and you're more in a supporting role, if you will. So those are just my checklist of how I know when to lean into a challenge. And really, since being involved in that capacity at the IPRA, two of the big things that have come up that I've leaned into and seen change in, one was actually not to go into just a ton of detail, but had a family member pass away, and there was a life insurance policy that the life insurance company didn't want to pay out on it. And I was just like, it was very black and white and clear to me that what they were doing was wrong. And while I was in a moment of, it was a lot of grief and a lot of things going on, I also knew that I'm like, this isn't black and white. Like, what they're doing is wrong. They should pay out on this. This person has paid for this life insurance for however long. And the fact that they are choosing to, basically have some gray area here and not pay out on it, it's wrong. And so, I leaned into that challenge, and it was a year and a half later before anything was done with it. But they paid it. And while, yes, there were, attorneys involved in all these things, it became something much bigger than myself, just like the breakaway roping was. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about this isn't okay to let it stay the way it is, because I knew it was worth leaning into. Another example is, there was a maternity leave policy that didn't really, it needed some work. I'll just leave it at that, at one of my jobs. And I brought it up, and my superior that I brought it up to didn't really see anything wrong with it. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go through the chain of commands. But have you ever felt like when, this analogy, let me just say this. When you slam your hand in a car door, nobody's hand hurts as bad as your hand that is stuck in that car door. And somebody can tell you like, oh, I understand, or this or that. But until they slam their hand in a car door, they don't know what that feels like. And they are not necessarily going to be spurred to action on something until they know that feeling. Well, that's how I felt with this maternity leave policy. And so went through the chain of commands. Basically, it's like, no, that's how it's always been. That's how it's always been. Well, it shouldn't be that way. And so this, again, was another opportunity where I was like, you know what, I'm going to lean into this. I just feel like, we're in 2020. Like, this should not be the way it is. And change happened. It was just another reminder of like, this is not about me. This is about what this can do for other people. And so, yes, it is worth leaning into this challenge, no matter how many feathers I ruffle, no matter what other people think. Like, when I know in my knower that this is what I'm supposed to be doing, like that's when you know to lean into a challenge.
Every once in a while, when I meet somebody new, they'll say, Dakota, where are you from? And I love having the opportunity to say, I grew up in a small town in rural Alabama. Now, whether you have small town roots or dream of one day trading in the city life for a little slower pace, or maybe you just enjoy an occasional weekend getaway where you can actually see the stars at night. Whatever your version of living the small town life looks like, my friends at thesmalltownlife.com, they have you covered with comfortable and unique ball caps and graphic tees that the entire family will love. Be sure to go follow them on Instagram and Facebook and use the hashtag #TheSmallTownLife when you're out there doing the small town living.
Remember, hard conversations are worth having when the outcome of the challenge matters to you more than being comfortable. I'll say that again. Hard conversations are worth having when the outcome of the challenge matters to you more than being uncomfortable. Okay, I'll own the fact that I got on my soapbox a little bit when talking about that last life skill of knowing when to lean into a challenge. And it's only because I've seen it work, and I've used that skill in big and small ways that made a difference. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what matters to me. It matters more than a crown, a buckle, a saddle, a title. It's all about impact and putting life skills to use in a meaningful way. We can all make an impact. Each of us have a very different and unique life experience, a unique story. And I want to challenge as well as encourage you. If you're not already thinking of your life experience through the lens of what life skills am I adding to my resume, then you need to start this practice now. Don't wait any longer. Just start by simply paying attention. You could even journal or take notes on how the experiences you're walking through are equipping you with skills that can be used in other areas of your life. Or start paying closer attention to the people you admire and the way they show up. We can learn so much by observing others and how they use their life skills. Now, if there's only one thing you take away from today's episode, because we've covered a lot, and I so appreciate you hanging out with me today, listening to my heart, taking a stroll down memory lane with me. And I pray if you take away one thing today, this is it, okay? Never underestimate how pursuing your own dreams will impact others, as well as sharing your story. There will be people in your immediate circle that you are aware are watching, but don't forget about the ones that you've never met and that you might not ever meet that are watching you too. They see you as a waymaker, even on the days you don't see it yourself. I am so grateful for the experiences, the friendships, and the life skills the IPRA has given me over the last 13 years. And giving back to an association that has influenced and shaped me into the person I am today gives me an incredible amount of joy. I am in a season of being on the sponsorship side of the rodeo industry and just really getting to invest into the contestants for both Miss Rodeo USA and the Cowgirls Breakaway Roping. And you know what? There will come a time, there will come a point in my life where I'm not chasing kids and I'm chasing calves again. And I'm looking forward to that. But this season of life is so special. And I'm adding to that resume of life skills because I'm getting to see things from the lens of a sponsor and really understanding, what that looks like and learning as I go. So I just want to say best of luck to all the cowboys and cowgirls competing this week at the International Finals Rodeo. And if you're looking for something to do, be sure to check that out, whether it's this year in 2023 or you put it on your calendar for next year. You won't be disappointed. The IPRA delivers incredible, family fun, jam-packed action every single performance at the International Finals Rodeo in Guthrie, Oklahoma at the Lazy E. So thanks for tuning in, and here's to making each day count, my friend.
Thank you for spending your time with me on the Cowgirl Confessions podcast. I'm so glad y'all stopped by. If you could take a moment to share this episode and tag us on social media, I'd be happier than a cowgirl in a sea of buy one, get one vintage turquoise. Subscribe to make sure you don't miss an episode. New episodes will be released bi-monthly. Please leave us a review if you feel so led by going to iTunes. Your feedback will really help us breed the idea of grabbing life by the horns with a cowgirl state of mind into women across the globe. Some that may have never even had the privilege to throw their leg over a horse, but could most certainly use the cowgirl state of mind while navigating life. Thanks again, y'all. Until next time, keep pursuing your dreams with that all go and no woe mentality. Remember, you're writing a story that's worth saddling up for, sister.